welcome to Flawed and Happy. I am glad you are here. How are you doing tonight? So this is Friday, April 26th, and welcome to the recovery series. I'm glad you're here. Tonight we're going to be talking about step one. Step one. I know a lot of people get intimidated about step one, but honestly, it took me a long time, and I mean a very long time, years, to get comfortable with the idea of step one. Step one, what is it? It's pretty simple, kind of. I'm just going to read it real quick. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. If you notice, if you're familiar with any type of steps whatsoever, you're going to notice that all the steps begin with we. It's because you're not meant to work them by yourself. And that's the really cool thing about recovery is you're not meant to work them by yourself. The really cool thing about coming into recovery is that you are coming in and you are meeting a lot of people that have been exactly where you are. I can remember when I first came into the program and when I first started, pondering the idea and the thought as to whether or not I myself could even be an alcoholic or an addict. I didn't like the idea. But when I came into the program, I was always looking at the differences that I had with other people instead of looking at the similarities. And I struggled and I suffered for a very long time because of it. So what I want to share with you guys about my own personal experience when it comes to step one, that step one, if you think about it, there's two parts to step one. Step one, the first thing you got to do is it's we admitted we're powerless over alcohol. So the first thing you have to do is you have to be able to recognize that you have a problem with alcohol to begin with. And I had a really big problem with that because I was 21 years old when I came into the program. I was 21. I was a mother of 3. And actually what brought me into the program is I lost my 16-year-old babysitter in a blackout. Thank God she was totally fine. Nothing bad happened to her. In a blackout, I took her to a house party instead of taking her home. Thank God she was fine. Nothing happened to her. But yeah, I did. Her mom had approached me and had asked me if she thought, or if I thought, whether or not I had a problem with alcohol. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I'm only 21. Everybody my age that I know is doing exactly what I'm doing. We're all drinking and we're partying. And and I am party girl. This is what I do. I drink on the weekends. I party on the weekends. And I honestly felt as though I was deserving of it. I busted my ass all week long. I took care of my kids. I honestly believed in my own mind that I was a damn good mother because I was home all week long. I did everything that I needed to do. But one thing that I was failing to recognize is that while I was home all week long, I was short-tempered because I wanted to be drinking. I was looking forward to the weekend because I couldn't wait to be drinking. Because I was party girl, I was always worried about the outfit I was going to be wearing, who I was going to be partying with, what shots I was going to be taking. Alcohol really did rule my world. So she was right. I did have a problem with alcohol. But she didn't come right out and say, you have a problem with alcohol. She asked me if I thought I had a problem with alcohol. And and the reason why she kind of wondered, it wasn't because I misplaced her daughter in a blackout. It was because her children had been babysitting for me for a very long time. And it was so I could drink. So she knew how often I was drinking. She knew I was drinking every weekend. And it was on occasion I would drink during the week too. So, she definitely was getting a very clear picture. I was the one in denial of it. I was the one that thought I was deserving of it. Okay, so when you look at the aspect of we admitted we're powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. Now comes the unmanageability part. So, well, before I go there, let me back up. So, I'm going to consider back then. I'm 21 years old and I'm open to the idea of maybe possibly considering the idea that I could possibly have a problem with alcohol. And I did know where to go just in case that might come up, because back when I was 16 years old, my best friend, she actually went to this place for her alcoholism. And she back then told me I was an alcoholic, and she took me there one time, and I left there and I told her, no, I wasn't. No, I am not. And I did not go back. So she continued to go to meetings. A little while later, she ended our friendship because I continued to drink, and I didn't have anything to do with her for about 6 months. She ended our friendship. She told me that her sobriety was very important to her and that she needed to do that for her. And one night I happened to be back home in my hometown, which is where she had returned to. She moved back to. I was 5 months pregnant with my first child, and her and I rekindled our friendship. And that particular night, we got together, we got to visiting, and a week later she died in a car accident. I was pretty devastated. She was my best friend, and because she had taken me to my very first meeting when I was 16 years old, now that I'm 21, and my babysitter's mother is basically telling me I could possibly have a problem, I knew where to go. I knew exactly where to go. So that Sunday morning, I went back home because I was at my babysitter's house. I felt awful, awful, awful. I went down to her house and I was just like groveling at her feet, and I am apologizing over and over and over for losing her daughter. How could I do that? I was in a blackout, just total blackout. It was devastating for me. For her, the cops were involved. I mean, it was bad. So I go back home and I call this establishment, and this man answers, and I was still drunk from the night before. I was pretty boggled up in the head, and so I did not go to a meeting that day. I decided to just keep drinking that day, and so the next day on Monday, I went to a 5:15 meeting. That was the first meeting I went to. I can still remember the people that were there, and I remember there was a guy there, and he had over 20 years of sobriety, and I remember him saying he had not taken a drink of alcohol, and I remember I looked at him, and I was like, what? Not even a shot? I didn't believe him. And I didn't believe him because in my sick head, in my mind, I could not comprehend the idea of living life without alcohol. I could not comprehend that because that's where my head was. That's where my mind was, because I was only 21 years old. I never even gave it a thought to live without alcohol. So that was the start of my long, treacherous road of recovery. Good Lord, it took me 10 years to get one consecutive year. Okay, second part of step 1. That was only my first meeting. That our lives had become unmanageable. Oh, good Lord, you guys, you know what? I was so stubborn. I was so incredibly stubborn. I honestly didn't think there was anything wrong with my life. I really didn't. Everything about my life up until this point, I pretty much messed it up. If any of you know anything about Alcoholics Anonymous or the Big Book, it it clearly talks about self-will run riot. That was definitely me. It was me. And I was so ignorant. I didn't even recognize it. I didn't know anything. I was so stupid. Okay, so I didn't think there was anything wrong with my life. I was a functioning alcoholic. Like, I could get up and go to work. I did not drink every day. I really didn't drink at home. Not until a little bit later, but even then it was maybe once or twice a month. And eventually I started playing cards at home maybe once a weekend. But that's neither here nor there. I was what you call a blackout drinker. Once I start, I can't stop. And that's the way I drank from the very first time I ever drank at a very young age. The very first time I drank, I knew I had definitely found something magical, and I loved it. And I knew I already wanted more before I even knew what the hell it was. I had no idea what it was I had discovered, and I didn't even care. I didn't even know how to use it. I didn't even know how to mix it, and I really didn't care. I was very young, and a girlfriend of mine and we were lucky. Like, seriously, when you are a young alcoholic, believe me, we like literally fell into the luck of alcoholicism. So her stepfather managed a bar. Yes. Bonus. So at the bar, all the bottles that would get like this much alcohol in them, this much, he'd bring them all home and restock the bar with full bottles. So we knew where all those bottles were. Oh my gosh. Anytime we wanted alcohol, we had full access. We had no idea how to mix drinks. No clue. We taught ourselves. We mixed with anything and everything. We experimented. We had no idea what we were doing back then. There was no such thing as Google. There was no such thing as cell phones. You just kind of went in blind. You just tried it, and oh gosh, it was something else. So, it didn't take long for a lot of our friends to realize that, hey, she had no adult supervision at her house because her stepdad is running a bar and her mom was the bartender. And there was a lot of alcohol at her house. So we all drank it. We partied at her house a lot. And her house was only 1 block from my house. And I used to sneak out my bedroom window. I could literally look out my bedroom window and boom, there was her house. So it worked out perfect. Anyway, yeah, perfect for an alcoholic. So that was the good part about my childhood growing up as far as the drinking goes. Now, I think all of us at some point we have, those woe is me stories, and I'm not going to get into those. And I think a lot of us probably have those heart-wrenching, heartbreaking stories that, are not very good. And I have some of those. I got some pretty heartbreaking stories, and I'm not going to get into those at this point. I will tell you this, though. A lot of the way I was brought up definitely played a huge part in the way I drank. From the very first time I drank, that alcohol, the moment it touched my taste buds and it went down into my esophagus, my stomach, it was like magic. Ooh, it was magic. It did something inside me, and it transformed me into something that I didn't even know I could be. It made me beautiful, so incredibly beautiful. It made me feel like I fit in everywhere, no matter who I was with, no matter where I was at. It made me feel like I just fit anywhere. That liquid was so incredibly magical. It just made me feel like I didn't give a shit about anything that went on around me at any point in time, and I absolutely loved it. So I used to try to drink that magical stuff anytime I could. I ended up meeting the love of my life many times over. And I really did. I can remember my best friend, my best friend that took me to my very first meeting when I was 16 years old. I met the love of my life, and it was her brother, her older brother. I was actually really young, and he was quite a bit older than me, but damn it, I was in love. And then things didn't work out between him and I because he met the love of his life, and things just didn't work out, and we broke up. And then I met another love of my life, and that love of my life lasted for a weekend, and darn it, that one didn't work out either, and I sobered up, and I realized, well, holy smokes, that I guess he's really not the love of my life, and then I did meet the love of my life, and holy cow. So this particular love of my life, one night, I happened to pull up I was with some friends, and we happened to pull up in front of this bar, and I always looked older than what I was, and I always act older than what I was, and I sounded a lot older than what I was. So I was able to drink in a lot of bars at a very young age before I was even of age, and it was pretty cool. So we pull up to this bar, and just as soon as we pull up, I see this guy standing outside, and I'm just like, ooh. And I got this girl sitting, I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and this girl is sitting in the middle, and her boyfriend is driving the car, and I'm like elbowing her, and I'm like, who's that? Who's that? And boy, I got like, I'm falling in love. I'm falling in love. I don't even know his name. All I'm doing is looking at him, and I'm just like, ooh, I'm feeling things. I'm tingling, and I'm like, I'm gonna get his name, and in my mind, I'm marrying him. I'm gonna have his babies, and we're gonna live our lives out together. We're probably gonna live in a trailer house. I'm gonna get some plaid curtains, maybe, and it's gonna be pretty cool. I might have some chickens, and so I'm elbowing this girlfriend of mine, and she's like, I don't know who that is, and so I'm like, hey, to her boyfriend, and he was like, that's my best friend. And I'm like, oh, well, right, that's the best friend. So this dude comes over to the car, and he like gets down in the window, and he looks over, and he looks right at me. Like, ooh, he looks at me, and he says, I know you. What? He knows me. Right away, I'm like, great. I'm a blackout drinker. I probably freaking met him one night in a blackout, and I don't even remember it. And obviously, it wasn't a very good impression. Otherwise, I would have remembered him, right? Jeez. So I'm like, oh, great. And I'm like, you do? How do you know me? So he tells me. He's like, well, you're so-and-so's friend, which was his cousin. And I'm like, yeah. Okay, so it's a really small world. And you know what? I'm going way off topic because this is supposed to be, this is how I am though, you guys. This is supposed to be about step one. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. Well, you know what? I was powerless over men too, and this particular man, he played a very big role in my life, so we are gonna roll with it. So, okay, anyway, this particular guy, yes, I did know his cousin. My brother used to live at his cousin's house. He was their hired man, and my brother actually committed suicide on his cousin's yard. So I met that family when I was really young, and I got really close with that family. So that particular guy's uncle became a huge father figure in my life. I used to go and spend a lot of time with his cousin. And there was three girls all together, and then the dad and the mom. And I became very, very close with that family. I felt very close to my brother when I was at their house because my brother committed suicide there. And so very sad part of my life, very sad part. And so that particular guy that I seen on the street in front of the bar, I ended up picking him up off the street that night, and I ended up staying with him for 11 and a half years on and off. We ended up having 2 kids, to make a long story short. And yeah, so there's that. That particular story, we will get into it at a later date. So yeah, he definitely was there when I went in to my very first meeting when I was 21 years old. He did not believe that I was a true alcoholic. He did think I needed to slow up on my drinking, though. That he did. I definitely was a bulldozer when I wanted to drink, I wanted to drink, and there was no stopping me, and he knew that. He couldn't even stop me. I used to lie. I used to say I was going to go to the convenience store sometimes and just buy something, and I'd leave and not come back. I used to do that a lot, and he just, I don't know, he just let me go. I mean, what could he do? I was 21. I felt as though I deserved to drink. What 21-year-old doesn't? What I didn't realize is that alcoholism was definitely had its grips around me. The unmanageability part, I did not realize that my life was unmanageable because I felt as though since I was a working alcoholic, my life was manageable. But it really wasn't. I was jockeying around bills in the house just to make sure that I had money left over. So I had enough money to go out and drink. So I had enough money to buy enough booze to have at home. So I could have enough money to take enough shots that I was going to want to be taking, so that step one, I actually ended up working for quite a few years. As I said earlier, it took me 10 years to get one consecutive year, and it was a very rough road for the most part. I was pretty stubborn. I worked numerous steps quite a few times, repeatedly, before I finally hit enough bottoms. And I finally hit my last bottom and said enough is enough on August 23rd of 2010 and said, that's it. I'm done playing. Some people aren't as fortunate to be able to have so many bottoms. I seen people not be as fortunate, and they actually died. I seen them die. Not with my own eyes, but I seen them go out and relapse and then go to their funerals. So I was pretty fortunate. Especially, I was so arrogant, though. I honestly believed, but that'll never happen to me. It'll never. How many times have you probably even said that yourself? It'll never happen to me, but that'll never happen to me. How arrogant can we possibly be? What makes us think we're that special that it will never happen to us? Really? Really? I ain't that special. I'm not. And it took me a long time to finally realize that I am on the exact same plane as what everybody else is. I am no different. I am no better than anybody else. I don't care who you are, where you are, what you have, what you don't have. I don't care. I don't care if you're a billionaire. I don't care if you're homeless. We are all on the exact same level in life. A lot of people will disagree with that, but I don't. I don't. So step one. The quicker and the faster that you can get through that, I wouldn't suggest taking the road I did. I honestly wouldn't. 10 years to get one consecutive year was a very long, treacherous road. the quicker you can admit that you are powerless over alcohol and that your life had become unmanageable, the quicker you're going to be well on your way into some nice, healthy, emotional sobriety. And that's where you want to go. So, all right, that is it for this step 1. We'll eventually move along to step 2. And I hope I help somebody out there. Even if it's just one person, that's all we need to do. Just help one. That's it. Just one. Thanks for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. Flawed and happy. Flawed and happy. See you later. Bye-bye.